This is the Movie Theater Butter Podcast, where we talk about stories made into movies and what was modified for the big screen. As a warning, this episode will discuss the plot of both the movie and its original source material, so be ready for spoilers. I'm your host, Kim Labick, and I hope you enjoy the show. You close your eyes, pull open the creaking door of the old wardrobe, unsure of yourself years after your adventures therein. Will you find the same magical world you remember as a child? With kind-hearted fawns and other courageous creatures, bright, beautiful landscapes that stretch on for infinity? Or will you be faced with the reality of nothing more than a handful of old coats? You dare not open your eyes. You're sure it will only break your heart to see. One foot steps in blindly, imagining only what colors and fabrics of coats will soon hit your face. A second step hard against the wood flooring, and then a third, slowly landing on something soft yet firm. A fallen jacket, perhaps? The question begs you to open your eyes, but before you can muster up the courage, a great chill wipes over your skin, and a familiar voice says, "Is it really you?" Today on the Movie Theater Butter Podcast, we're discussing The Chronicles of Narnia, the 2005 blockbuster hit, based on the first installment of the book series, written by C.S. Lewis. Now, part of the reason I dug deep into the early 2000s for this week's episode is because it was announced a while ago that Greta Gerwig will be adapting the first two books into two new movies for Netflix soon. So, to celebrate Narnia and to hype us up for these new films, let's talk about the most well-known adaptation of the story so far. Here to join me today is reoccurring guest and one of my best friends, Jen.
At this point, some would say co-host of the Movie Theater Butter.
Basically.
But yes, it's me. I'm back again for another episode. I got my movie, I got my theater, and I got my butter. Let's go.
Ah, perfect. That's all you need. All right, well, we always start with a favorite quote. I'm going to start off with mine, and then Jen, I'll let you take it over and tell me what your favorite quote from either this movie or the book was.
Sounds Gucci.
My quote was a little bit early on, and it's sort of when Lucy has discovered Narnia and nobody's going to believe her. Mm-hmm. And straight up, like, Peter and Susan are, like, ready to commit her to just, like, an insane asylum. They're like, what are we going to do? Throw her in a house? She's crazy. Mm-hmm. And they're talking to the professor. And the professor goes, "My dear young lady," said the professor, "there is one plan which no one has yet suggested and which is well worth trying." "What's that?" said Susan. He goes, "We might all try minding our own business." And I was like, damn, you're right. End the movie right there. End the story right there.
Roll credits.
It's done. This was a quote from the book, technically, but we get that same vibe in the movie of he's just kind of like, I don't know, man. Just like get over it.
Heck
Or
yeah.
like investigate the wardrobe.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because later the professor mentions that, like, he says something along the lines of, like, why wouldn't you believe Lucy? She's never lied before. And why would you believe Edmund when all he does is lie? Which is some words of wisdom from our little professor here.
Yeah, like, why are we gaslighting Lucy when we could be, like, knocking down Edmund, who's, like, actually just a piece of shit?
Exactly.
He has character growth, but for so much of the movie, he's just, like, this annoying little kid, which is the point. And, like, I mean, we all were annoying little kids at some point.
Some would say there are people that are still annoying little kids.
Some would say some of the leaders of our country are still annoying little kids. And on that note, The Chronicles of Narnia. Jen, what is your favorite quote from either this film or the book?
My favorite quote, I really didn't have a favorite quote. I read this book a while ago. I actually did it on my podcast, and I didn't get a chance, unfortunately, to reread it. So I don't know if this one's from the book or from the movie. I did watch the movie, but it's called All Shall Be Done, but it may be harder than you think. And Aslan said that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really good quote where it's like, because the whole thing is about a prophecy. There's a prophecy being told about the two daughters of Eve and the two sons of Adam. And everything's gonna happen no matter what. It is fate, it is destiny, it is prophecy. And it's gonna be hard. No matter how much you either go with it or go against it, either way, the outcome is gonna happen. It's just if you follow through with that or not. So I really like that quote.
Yeah. I like that, especially given the context of there's so much emphasis on like prophecies in this story, which coming off of like I was on a Dune hype for like a month straight, right? Like recording episodes, watching it. I'm gonna go see it again with a friend in a couple of weeks. So I just came off this Dune hype, and of course so much of Dune is this like prophecy. And then I rewatched this movie and it was like, oh yeah, a huge part of this movie is that there's this whole prophecy in the land of Narnia that 4 British children will come to this land and save this land, and specific things will happen during the events. And I was like, what is with, as a white person, okay, what is with white people and prophecies? Like,
bro, I don't know. I have a campaign that I run called Jadestone, and the entire theme of it is like prophecy and like destiny and fate. And I think it's just a very easy storyline. It is something that nobody's really gonna second guess or like talk over because it's such a normal thing. Is like prophecy is such an easy storytelling device. But
yeah, it's a way I think to help motivate your characters because it is pushing them in a way that's like, this is gonna happen anyways, so therefore go on this journey. Like, don't even think that you have a choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing, Jen. I've got a couple of topics I want to talk about, and we'll get there when we get there with a lot of these. But the first thing I wrote down on my notes after like favorite quote, opening, blah, blah. We get through the normal stuff for the podcast.
Yeah.
The first fucking thing I wrote that's actual notes that I want to talk to you about, Turkish delight.
Yeah.
It's the furthest thing from delightful. We all okay, go back to 2005 to 2006 to, the time that this movie came out, the time that we were watching this, the time that this was all up in our face.
Yeah.
And there's an iconic scene. It's in the book, it's in the movie, it plays out both way, the same way both times. And it's Edmund is like all over Turkish delight. He's like, oh my God, you're magic, you can do anything. Can you give me some Turkish delight? And Tilda Swinton's like, hey, yeah, man, here's some Turkish delight. And he's like, oh my God, greatest thing ever. And as a kid, I'm not British. I don't know what the heck Turkish delight is. But he's eating this thing that looks like it has like powdered sugar over it.
Yeah.
It looks like it's like kind of chewy. And I'm like, oh my God, that is like, it looks like the most incredible thing. And they just played off as if like this is the most delicious food to grace the mouths of any human being. And then there was a point in everyone's lives where you actually tried Turkish delight.
Yeah.
Did you ever actually try Turkish?
I have not.
Bad.
Yeah.
It's British food is disappointing constantly. And this especially was like when all of us had our first taste of Turkish delight. We go back to that scene in our minds and we're like, Edmund, what the fuck were you thinking? You could have asked for like a cheeseburger or some like smiley fries, and you asked for just like the dumbest, tasteless, like hard Jello with flour on it that you possibly could have.
I got Turkish delight is a gel of starch and sugar, consists largely of dates, pistachio, hazelnut, or walnut, bounded by a gel.
Delicious.
You mean you wouldn't sell your entire family for that? Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, I wouldn't sell my family for anything, but if you were going to try and sell me for, if you were going to try and sell me for food, make it something good. Anything but whatever you just described.
Yeah. I mean, benefit of the doubt, devil's advocate. Maybe because she is magical, she was able to like enhance and change the flavoring of that Turkish delight to make it more like spellbound. At least that's like a good way to like spin it. But it's either that or Edmund is just really in love with Turkish delight and is willing to sell his entire family for it.
Yeah. That's insane. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic, Edmund. Do better. Be better.
Don't get between a boy and his Turkish delight, okay?
Yeah, clearly. Because you'll literally start a war in a fictional world behind a wardrobe. Gosh. So, okay, I guess let's go a little bit chronologically, because this is the Chronicles of Narnia, and those are words that are similar. So let's go a little bit chronologically. Even before Turkish Delight, right? We get the book and the movie are very similar in the fact that they both begin by saying, like, British kids, war, they go to this new house. That's all you need to know. British kids during war, they get sent to this new house. And it's cool, and they're all exploring it. And something I find so funny that I noticed and I originally put in my notes and then I took away from my notes is that one of our earliest differences between the source and the film, technically, in the movie, the kids are all playing hide and seek when Lucy finds the wardrobe and goes into Narnia for the first time. And then technically, in the book, they're not really playing hide and go seek. They're still just exploring the house.
Yeah.
Which I initially wrote that down because I was like, well, yes, it's a difference. And we talk about the differences here on the podcast. And then sometimes I look up things to make sure that, like, I'm not missing anything big. And I look up, you know, like, differences between the book and the movie. And this is, like, the number one thing people comment on is, like, actually, guys, they're playing hide and seek in the movie, but they weren't playing hide. So now I'm like, I'm weirdly bitter about that. I don't know why. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I think that, and at large, what I want to say about this film, it's a very faithful adaptation.
Yeah.
Any of the things that we're going to talk about that maybe are different from the movie and the book are very minimal, and it doesn't really affect the story at large, and it doesn't really affect the vibes. I get the same sense of wonder and whimsy and fun reading the book that I do watching the movie, and that to me is the most important.
So here's the thing. I wouldn't label this as a fun movie. There's a lot of really intense moments. It's a lot of death and war and like
yeah, so fun.
Yeah, so fun. It's very adult, I feel like, for a children's book. So I don't know, man. I think I like the adaptation of them playing hide and seek more than them just exploring the house. Because it's showing them trying to find, like, escapism in their new life, I guess, in this new area that they don't know. And they're in a time they don't understand, and there's war going on around them. So they're like, you know, let's play a game. And that's, you know, ultimately leads to Lucy finding the wardrobe. So I do like the initiation being found through a game. Where it kind of is like an extension. Like, the Narnia is an extension of that game. And the entire thing about Narnia is escapism, is trying to run away from everything that's going on in their quote-unquote real life. And there's, you know, speculations of even if Narnia is real or has it been in their imagination the whole time, which is a whole nother
What do you think?
Bro, I don't know, because if you're watching the movie and, like, reading the books, the professor plays such a big role in it that if the professor doesn't say what he says at the end of the movie/book, I would think that it was just imagination. The kids were just imagining this, because Lucy is our main character, so she has such a broad imagination, and she's very creative, that it is easy to assume that this is a very much, like, imaginations at play. But then the professor comes in, he's telling them, like, you know, you can't go back through the wardrobe again to get to Narnia, and, like, all this kind of stuff at the end of the movie. So it's like, I honestly genuinely don't know if it is real or if it's make-believe. I mean, it's a book, so clearly it's fake, but...
Yeah, right.
But in their world.
In the fictional book, everything is up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Obviously. There's no right or wrong answer as it comes to that.
There's just some kids playing in a closet, okay?
It's just some kids playing in a closet.
Do you think they all turned out to be gay? Oh, sorry. Go
ahead. Whoa. Yeah, obviously. Because eventually they all left the closet, except for Mr. Tumnus. Mr. Tumnus is stuck in the closet.
Can we talk about Mr. Tumnus real quick?
Can we talk about Mr. Yes. Do you want to talk about Mr. Tumnus, the character, or James McAvoy as the incredible casting of Mr. Tumnus?
He did a good job. I will say he did a very good job playing that character. I can't tell you if that's a compliment or not. I'm going to be honest. Because It was just weird. It was just weird. It was a shirtless man, and he was like, "I'm kidnapping you," and like stranger danger. Where was that? Where was that? And that's in the entirety of this film. I was so uncomfortable during that scene when Lucy goes to his house to have tea.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like it. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I think it was supposed to be a little bit like that. Although in the book it was a bit more warm and cozy.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my god, but also in the book Mr. Tumnus got so whiny when he was like, "Oh no, I've done a bad thing, Lucy." And he kind of did in the movie, but like in the movie I think they go over it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh no, I did a bad thing." And she's like, "What did you do?" And he was like, "I sold your soul."
I'm kidnapping
Whereas
you.
in the book he's like, "Oh no, Lucy," and he's crying so much, and she constantly has to be like, "Why are you crying, Mr. Tumnus? Why are you crying?" And it takes him like a half a page, or almost like a full page before he's like, "Let me start to begin to tell you why I'm crying, Lucy." And he's still crying through, and he's like, "Oh, woe is me, I'm a bad person, make me feel better." And she's like, "Okay, I'll make you feel better, Mr.
Red
Tumnus." And then he's like, "Just kidding, I'm still kidnapping." Yeah, I'm like, you're manipulative.
Yeah. No, that scene really bothered me a lot.
I feel it. Also, there's something to be said about the fact that, like, this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but while we're talking kind of about the casting and stuff, there's something to be said about the fact that Tilda Swinton and James McAvoy, I think, are like the standout actors in this film to this day. And both of them are still incredibly well-known actors. And we're looking forward to those films by Greta Gerwig. So there's a chance she brings them back, even if just for a cameo. But there's a chance that she's like, "Hey, Tilda, do you want to play the White Witch again?"
Yeah. I think she did a very good job. Was the wardrobe a little off? Sure. But that wig, it was a little much. But she did do a really good job.
Yeah. We need like a Targaryen-style wig for her this time
around. What was the other name?
What was her? Tilda Swinton.
Oh, no, the other one. You said Tilda and then somebody else.
Oh, James McAvoy. Yeah, as Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah, I mean, solid gold casting right there. I will have to say I have some negatives about the casting.
Do it. Go. What do you got?
And that's just, I mean, it's a very common thing too, but it's just children actors, man. I did not love these group of kids. I think that they fit the role aesthetically, but there was just no emotion in them. 3 scenes that pop in my head, okay?
Okay.
3 scenes that pop in my head. Maybe throughout the movies and multiple and like random scenes maybe, but the 3 that should have been the most important. The train scene when they leave to go to the professor's house. Yes. No emotion. Seeing Aslan the first time, no emotion. Blank stares. And then Lucy almost drowning in the river. Blank nothing. It was giving nothing.
You're so right on that, and especially the Aslan scene that like super sticks out because that should be a big moment. Like, I mean, a lot of things in this movie should be a big moment, but you should be like, "Oh my god, this is the prophesized Aslan, and he's so majestic and he's so fluffy." And the only character like actually giving face during that was Lucy. I think Lucy was a great casting. I think she was an incredible actress, and I think even further along through these films, she still did great in her role and as her character develops. But yeah, I mean, you do have a bit of a point. Some of these actors just weren't giving, just weren't quite ready, you know? And I think it also could have been, this is just a wild assumption, but I think it also could have been because Harry Potter was so big around the time that there's all of this pressure as a young British actor to like be Harry Potter level, you know, especially when you get a movie like this that's like a big blockbuster fantasy film. I'm sure that there was part of that maybe that they were thinking or just hearing that could have affected performances. Or maybe I'm also giving them too much of the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I mean, if you rewatch the first one, it's not great. Their acting's not great. They're 11 years old. They don't know what they're doing. Their first job. Emma Watson was freaking reciting other people's quotes while she was doing her job. So
Hogwarts, a history.
Yeah, it's just children actors, period. Obviously, there are very, very talented people out there. And there's very talented children that can do that job. But not every little princess or prince can be an actor when they're 7, 8, 10, 15 years old. So it really stuck out to me. I didn't feel I think I said this before. I just didn't feel anything in these characters, period, even in the book. I just think they're so flat. They're very generic. That's just to me, I guess. Like, I get really into characters when I read books, and when I read this book the first time, it was just the strong, the brave, the gentle, whatever they are.
The wardrobe, yeah.
Yeah, they're just they're just so flat to me. I didn't really see. I think Edmund is our only ones that have
You're
the.
expecting like 10-year-olds to be well-rounded, complex. Well,
I
yeah, I mean, like,
expect the
everybody
author to
is.
be able to develop some sort of character from the beginning of a book to the end of the book, as that is one of the most important things of a book. Is your characters have to be relatable. If they're not relatable, then what story are you trying to tell? So yes, I think that
Yeah.
a 10-year-old should have at some point some kind of redeeming qualities about them as they're learning, because they're coming of age. They should be learning things. So I think if
Hmm.
you are having a character so young, then give them obstacles to overachieve. Like Edmund again is our only one that really has any character development, because he kind of comes from this like negative side where everyone's looking down on him, and then he becomes an equal with his siblings. I wish that was just across the board.
I would argue that they do have character development. I don't know. Like, okay, you're right. You're definitely right overall. I think there's some points to be made, like if I really wanted to strongly argue against you. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think overall, like, your thesis is right.
Not
Yeah,
saying that they're completely stark, like
right.
Peter gets stronger and is more capable of making decisions, and Susan takes charge a little bit more, and Lucy, thinks about things a little. There are those like bare surface level stuff, but we weren't with the characters long enough to get like in-depth character development.
Yeah, and kind of like you were saying too, they definitely started out already pretty polished as characters.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's like where you that's such a hard part of any story though, is making a character that is like, if you're trying to go as sort of the good guy protagonist that becomes a better guy protagonist,
Yeah.
that can be very tough because if you make them too good and okay in the beginning, they don't have anywhere to go.
Mhm.
Like some of these guys were. Like really the only problems that I had, well, again, Edmund aside because he's a different story. But really the only problems I had with like Susan and Peter is that they like didn't super believe Lucy. But
Yeah.
even then, like they didn't. It wasn't bad. They were more just like, "Aha, we don't believe you." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's your character flaw." Okay,
Yeah, it's just
cool.
frustrating because it took is it Lewis? Yeah, C.S. Lewis 10 years to write this book. And I just
Mhm.
feel like in that time you could do a little drawing board, do a little blueprint here, and just try to get a little bit more in depth with your characters. I feel like it just fell through to me. But I'm very skeptical when it comes to characters, so
Totally valid. It's not like you're a writer or anything. That
no.
that's a huge part of your life and your education and your skill set is to
No.
know how to make a good story and work
What's
with
a
good
word?
characters. What's a
I
word? I don't even know. I had Googled what a word was the other day. ChatGPT wouldn't even tell me. Things are crazy. Okay, wait. Total sidetrack. What do you think about. No, I mean, I don't even know how to phrase this. I just want to talk about. I just want to talk about the fact that, like, these kids were escaping a real war
Mhm.
through a fictional war. I don't even know how to question thoughts. What are your thoughts on
What's the
me
question?
saying this? What's
Give me
I
the
just
question.
literally did I just literally did that Emma Stone thing. If you've ever seen that interview bit with Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield, where she starts to ask him a question and then totally loses it and then makes
Uh,
it an intentional joke. I'm just like,
so
I
what
don't
I'm
even
picking
know.
up is you're asking me is like, what was the point of them coming from like a real world war to a fictional war?
Yeah, or I guess like how do you grapple with the fact that them as children, their adventure, whether you believe it's fictional or not, their
Hmm.
adventure also leads them to a war.
I guess.
Coming like trying to escape a real war
Hmm.
into this otherworldly, like what are your thoughts on that?
I guess my thoughts on it is that it's a little bit of wanting to have a possible hand in the outcome. Maybe they felt that they couldn't do anything, so they wanted to create a world where they could. And you would notice that when they are talking about the war in Narnia, it's the older kids that don't want to participate. Peter and Susan, they're like, no, we can't do this, we can't do this. And if Lucy's our stem, is our, like, you know, our main, quote unquote, main character, she is what creates this, then maybe the war has been on her mind a little bit more, so she wants to have a hand on fixing this. So it's a little bit of both, like, wanting a hand in it, but also wanting to feel like they have a purpose and, like, a meaning, and being able to, I guess, have, like, change the outcome, change the prophecy, change the fate a little bit, without it being too worldly with the actual war that was going on.
That's a beautiful interpretation. I love that. And it also kind of reminds me of just another, actually, this is probably one of the most important differences between the book and the film. You mentioned Susan, and you know that Susan and Peter are the more reluctant because they're the older siblings.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, Susan doesn't really fight. Susan's not really a fighter. When there is battle, she stays back. Whereas in the film, we very clearly see her fight. She has a much bigger role. And I think that was the right choice in a lot of ways. I think it gives her character more depth, and it just felt like it made more sense for her character in the film. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of feeds into how you're interpreting this story.
Plot.
how you're interpreting this plot and sort of the meaning of this plot. Because like you're saying with that you think the kids feel they have more importance in this, because they do. They're literally the prophecy. They're like literally the main characters, all of that. Versus like in World War II, they're just children who would die if they were not, you know, taken care of.
Yeah.
It makes sense that people like Susan and Peter, in a sense where they are in a more theoretically safer war, would have that ability to step up and be more comfortable to be brave and to be the hero when it's kind of offered to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also we get to see her with the bow and arrow, so she becomes one of our archer queens, and we have many, and we love them.
Which is funny because, like you had said, she stands back a lot, so she's a ranged warrior, so...
She's a ranger. A ranger.
Speaking of D&D, we're not, but
yeah,
no, we are.
No, we were totally talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
That little stone staff thing that the Ice Queen had, I'm definitely gonna put that in D&D, where you like stab somebody and turn him to stone. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna use that.
That is pretty cool. That would be a very fun item to have. Also, dude, even actually just the magic in this story, I think is well balanced. Like, talking about D&D, when you're playing any kind of game, when you're doing any kind of fantasy game, there's this just level of trying to have balance in your actual mechanics. So if you have a magical item, it's not so overpowered that it can beat everything, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of, you weigh it to balance it. I know this is kind of a silly thing to remark on, but it can really ruin a story if the magic is not balanced in a film. Even in Harry Potter, okay? Like, even in Harry Potter, the magic is pretty well balanced, but then every one of us at some point can look to it and be like, well, if you guys have a time turner, why did you not just go back in time and kill Voldemort? Or, you know, something like that. Yeah. So there's still moments where it's like, if you're not very careful with how you balance the magical abilities in a story, you can very well fall into this just trap of like, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And it doesn't have to perfectly make sense. It's a kid's story. But just as like a compliment to C.S. Lewis and to the filmmakers, it felt like it was balanced. You know, we saw the negative side effects, we saw the positive side effects, where I never felt like there was a moment where it was like, oh, that's so overpowered, or like, oh, why wouldn't that do anything? Yeah. So good on you, Narnia. Good on you.
I think the magic, I'm glad there wasn't a huge magical ability that they have to learn, anything like that. Like, the magic in a world should be magic. Like, it should be magical, especially when they're coming from a modern world to a magical world. It shouldn't be this, like, push aside. Because, like, Harry Potter, going back, I know we're comparing to Harry Potter a lot, but going back to Harry Potter, I feel like Harry wasn't as blown away as he should be. In the first movie, we get it, but it quickly goes away as he's getting used to it. Where there should be days where he's like, wow, I'm, am in a magical world. Because it's supposed to be like coming from a world like this to a world like that. It changes everything. And this one, it doesn't necessarily go into magic. I guess with like when Aslan falls, he comes back. I think that has to do with something with magic. I kind of got
also
lost.
Just like he's basically Lion Jesus. So that's just I don't know. I don't know if you could even call that magic or if you could just call that like the power of being Aslan, aka Lion Jesus.
Yeah, most likely. But yeah, I really like that we didn't get a ton of magic. I also want to say that the CGI for 2005, I think really held up.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really hard because there was like a time period in the early 2000s where there were movies that nailed it in this exact way, right? That we can look back on those films and be like, hey, it still works. I'm still happy with it. And there's two reasons for that. Let's explain this. There's two reasons for that. One, it's because the filmmakers knew when to and when not to use CGI. That helps immediately. If you use CGI too much as a crutch, it's not going to hold up. You're going to have too much to put on your VFX team. It's going to just look bad. It's not going to hold up in the future. So that's part of the reason is like as a filmmaker, when you're first making it, no matter what time you're making this in, you need to know when to use it and when to do more practical or to even just like kind of change your direction overall to overcome that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's one factor. The second reason why I argue it holds up is because there are so many films nowadays that don't have good CGI because they're not being given the proper budget to make things as best as they possibly can be. So we've seen a lot of like kind of crappy CGI in films in the past like 5-10 years. And so that's also why it feels like it holds up because we haven't like, how do I say this politely? Like
advanced our abilities?
Yeah, we haven't really advanced. We haven't really peaked. Or not even that we haven't advanced. Like we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to make every single piece of CGI look like Smaug from the Hobbit series. Perfect. But so often they don't get the budget to make that happen. Yeah. A lot of Marvel films, I mean, that's a huge thing right now is people are talking about a lot of Marvel films, their CGI and their effects look like CW films from 2012. Like that's the level of CGI they're working with. But it's like, it's not that it's not possible. Because again, we've seen it. We know it's possible. We know that we have reached the peak abilities of this technology. We just haven't reached the point of giving people the proper budget to make this come to life. So often we get like, oh, we're going to cut back on your budget. We're going to cut back on time, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, then you get a worse product. And so now that we have so many films in the main space of film that don't have good CGI in them for these reasons, we look back on something made 20-something years ago, 20-ish years ago, and we're like, oh, wow, this really holds up. But if everything was perfect CGI all the time, I don't think we would have this note. I think we would be like, yeah, the CGI is fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely agree.
That's my rant. Pay your VFX people better. Pay your CG artists better.
Pay everyone better.
Everyone. Pay me better.
Yeah. Pay me, period.
Pay me.
No, I definitely agree. Another thing I want to add about, like, I want to compliment about this movie is that, so one thing I noticed is that the scenes are very simple. Like, I'm not saying, like, the big, far out, like, landscape scenes, which are gorgeous. Like, when they're coming over the mountainsides and showing these big old land, like, pullovers, it looks so good. But the scenes where they're in specific areas are so simple. Like, we have the dungeon and the Ice Queen's palace and her throne room. It's all so simple. And you could take that as you will, if you could take it as a compliment or a bad thing. But it was just things I noticed, which I don't typically pick up on when I'm watching movies. I kind of just take it in as I am. Because, again, I'm character focused. So I care more about what the character's wearing, what they're saying, what their emotions are than really the landscape and like the setting around. But this one I noticed the setting around.
Interesting. Okay. That is a good thing to note, that you could take it either way, because you could say, dude, film is subjective. The whole reason
Book
we
is
have
art.
this podcast. Yeah, book is perfect. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing to comment on. I wouldn't have really pointed that out, so that's interesting. Now I kind of want to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
And start picking away, like, is this a bad... Because I guess I would say I never felt that it was taking away from the film at all. I never felt taken out of the world. So at the very least, you made it, to the immersion level, which is what this story should be. You're supposed to be immersed in this fictional world. But it's interesting because, I mean, I think it's a compliment to the filmmaker to have a space that is still simple, and yet you are watching it, and for every other reason of the filmmaking process, you are still immersed.
Yeah.
So,
there's a scene where they have the wardrobe as like one big one, and it's quite literally the only thing in the room. It's just like cream colored walls, wooden floors, a couple windows on the left side, and then it's just the wardrobe right there, which in itself, it symbolizes that there's something going on with this wardrobe. It's literally called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You're supposed to notice it. But when it's literally your title, I don't think it should have been so stuck out. I think, like, personally, I would have cluttered the room and made the wardrobe stick out in a different reason.
Like a beautiful beam of light through like a crack in the ceiling.
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting that they chose to do a very empty room with just a wardrobe in it, which pulls back into that professor again. He put that there for a reason. I think he has a more in-depth tie to it, but I don't know because I never finished the series.
No, that's totally valid, because it really makes you think, like, oh, if he has a room where literally the only thing in it is a wardrobe, then it makes it more likely that, like, yes, it's totally a real place, because he basically has a room dedicated to, like, this otherworld portal, versus it leans more towards, like, oh, well, maybe it just is their imagination if it's, like, a regular room and the wardrobe just happens to be in the room. Less, like, highlighted.
Yeah, I think if it was... That's why I'm, like, so confused on, like, if it's real or not, because, like you've said, if it was in a cluttered room, then I would pull to believe it more to be make-believe. But because it was singled out in a room that only the professor really knew that was there, then it makes me to believe that maybe there is a more realistic tie to it, because I don't know.
Yeah. Dude, that is the kind of scene... It's going to be so great now to see how Greta Gerwig adapts that to film, because we can go back to this conversation. Does she direct it? Is this scene, the room is more cluttered, is more a natural filled looking room, or is it still very singled out? And what does that say about how Greta herself interprets and want you to interpret the world of Narnia? Exactly.
That's why world building and like setting your scene is so important, because the room and things in a room tell a story. And yeah, we have the wardrobe, which is obviously our quote-unquote main character, essentially. It's the initiative of, like, the whole thing. But having a simple room like that just sets the story up so much. And, like, you gotta pay attention to the little things. Like, those things matter.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I do want to sidetrack us over back to Aslan, actually, while we're kind of talking about what could be some of these future adaptation bits and how we're kind of moving the story forward to the next film. Again, Aslan is basically Lion Jesus. I mean, if you're really deep into like Christian lore, I think you can technically argue he reflects a different character in Christianity and that kind of thing.
Oh, Christian lore! You really pulled my attention.
All right, like you know what I mean. But yeah, he's kind of like Lion Jesus. We literally have that scene. He dies. He comes back to life. Yesterday was Easter. As you and I are recording this, Jen, yesterday was Easter. Who do you think of when you think of resurrection? Who do you think of? Just tell me. Who's it gonna be?
Like just like a general thought.
He's just like a general thought.
Harry Potter. We've been talking about him so much.
Harry Potter is literally just British Jesus, so
True.
Yeah, same thing.
Oh god, I'm put on the spot, so now I don't know. Who's died and come back to life?
Who? Name one guy. One guy.
Like any guy?
Any guy.
Any guy. Oh, God.
2-syllable name. Name him.
How spoiler can I get right now? Because I could name someone from Fourth Wing, but that would be a spoiler.
Oh, okay. But nonetheless, again,
Yeah.
Aslan is basically Lion Jesus. You know, he has
Mm-hmm.
that whole resurrection scene, which is great. I did want to ask you, okay, Jen, which famous lion death is more sad? Mufasa or Aslan? And why?
Mufasa. No, Mufasa. That's not,
Yeah,
it's not even a competition, bro.
you're
It's
so
no
right.
competition there. There's no competition there. It is Mufasa.
It's
Period.
the tears flowing in that scene every time.
Period.
And the tears when I rewatched Narnia did not flow. No
No,
flow.
I didn't feel anything because it's the fact that Mufasa doesn't come back. Like if Aslan did die, I think it would change, but it wouldn't have hit as hard because the Lion King, you don't expect it. It's literally a children's animated movie. You don't expect the dad to die. It's like freaking the guy in Big Hero 6 dying. You don't expect him to die. In Narnia,
Yeah.
I can expect it. There's a freaking war going on. You're gonna have casualties. But no, Mufasa hands down is the worst. It's so sad.
No, and I love your reasoning. I would totally agree. I would agree that like anytime I see a cross with Jesus on it, like a crucifix, I'm just not moved because I'm like,
Did I
guys, he
say
comes
that?
back at the end. Spoiler alert. I know.
Uh,
But because he comes back, obviously it's just like, his death doesn't matter. It's whatever.
yeah.
He died for our sins. Yeah, but guys, he came back. So
I would say that.
did he
Oh,
really?
I'm not gonna say it actually. I'll tell you after.
We'll talk later. We'll talk later.
Okay, okay.
No, I mean, Aslan is a great character. I am glad he comes back. I'm glad we get to see him in future stories. Spoilers.
I haven't
spoilers.
seen any of the other movies.
Oh, you're going to have to watch Prince Caspian. I do have somebody I'm already having guest on that episode.
I
so.
see.
Girl, okay, look, at this point, we
I
just
see.
talked about it earlier. At this point, you're basically the co-host of the podcast. You know you'll be on like every other episode.
True.
So.
The How to Train Your Dragon one, which still has to happen.
Yes, we're going to
6
just keep
years.
talking about that
Yeah.
for every single year.
They are making a live action, so we have to do it. If we don't do the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie with the talk of this podcast, I have to quit the podcast. I'm sorry.
No, that's completely valid. I respect your decision, and I respect that being your boundary. So for sure, we will finally record
Okay. Good.
either before or just after that movie comes out
Okay.
to talk about it. But The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was published in 1950, when C.S. Lewis was 50. We're just going off on a random fact now. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was published in 1950, when C.S. Lewis was 52 years old. But as you briefly mentioned earlier, and I would like to bring back now for the discussion, he was originally inspired when he was 16. Like, it took many years for this story to actually finally get written. And even when he started writing it, like, it took him several years to get this out. Just saying that as a fact for anybody listening, I think it's interesting. I think it's inspiring to know that you could have an idea, something right now, and even if you can't get it done for whatever reason, you've got time. You could, get it out when you're 52, get it out when you're 82. Creativity takes time.
Absolutely.
Everything's not going to be done right when you first have that idea, especially a novel or a film. Those are two of the most heavy undertakings of time. Film is clearly a heavier undertaking of time and energy and effort because hundreds of people are required to make most blockbuster films. But even writing a book is like, it's not easy. You don't just wake up one day and you're like, I guess I'll write a book tomorrow. Ha ha ha. It takes so much time of planning, of actually writing it out, of going through the rough draft, hating your rough draft, getting rid of this chapter, adding another chapter. But, just to go back to the fact, I think it's very interesting and very cool that he had this idea when he was younger and he finally came back to it when he was an adult and he was like, it's time, let's make this.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite books, Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, took 10 years to write. Like, it was, and that to me is a masterpiece. So I'm glad that it took her time she didn't rush it, it took her time to get everything exactly how she wanted it. I will say, though, that I think it's an equal decision. Like, you say that filmmaking's hard and that you have hundreds of people, but writing itself is also hard because it's just you alone. And you have to get your publication. You have to pretty much self-promote your own book. Like, they're both equally hard. It is not something that's going to just happen. no matter what, if it's something that you are doing, it's going to be hard because you have to, whether it's film, whether it's a song, whether it's a movie, whether it's a play, whatever it is pulled on your own ability. It's going to be hard. So no matter how you do it, as long as you are doing it, that is what matters. As long as you are doing it for yourself or for other people, whatever it is, as long as you're producing and getting your foot out there, or your step out there, whatever it is, as long as you're propelling yourself into your passions, that's what matters. No matter how hard it is, it's going to be worth it in the end.
Absolutely. Beautiful and inspiring. And I love that. I love that.
Not saying that movies aren't hard to make. Obviously, there's a lot more responsibilities to it, and there's a lot more reliability to it. But, any source of...
If you ask some of our major directors nowadays, they'll tell you it's not hard at all. Just pick up a camera. Haha.
Yeah, exactly. But any source of media is hard, and you have the trolls out there that'll make you say it's not worth it, but in the end, it will be.
Well said. Very well said. So, do you have any other things on your notes that you want to talk about that you want to poke at?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Why was James Cosmo in this? Why was there literally a Christmas, a Santa in this movie?
Oh, why did we have a straight up Santa Claus in this movie?
That was so out of just left field. It was so out of pocket. I was so confused. I didn't even know that this took place during Christmas.
Yeah.
Also, that guy, why didn't he just get them in the sleigh and take them to the stone table? Why did they have to go over the ice river?
It's just like the Eagles.
Exactly. I was about to say, it's like the Eagles in Lord of the Rings.
Literally. No, that's a good point. I mean, maybe just because he's got a lot of other errands to run if he's doing Christmas stuff.
I guess. He's
like, I don't have the time.
Yeah, he did say he was busy. But I'm like, dude, this is the king and queen and the prophecy are on hand right now. You should be willing to take a little pit stop.
What's more important, Santa or prophecy?
I would say they're interchangeable, but it was just so random for them to get those gifts from Santa, and he was just like, "Thanks, Santa." It was so weird. I was very thrown off by his presence.
It was weird, and I feel like it just could have been taken out of anything and everything. I feel like we definitely don't need to go there in the new adaptations, Greta.
Please,
make your own choices, boo. I will trust you, but we really don't need Santa in the new Narnia movies. But in the books, it's a little bit more of an important part, but it kind of C.S. Lewis makes it an important part in a weird way. What I mean by that is we kind of build up this whole White Witch thing. A lot of times when we talk about the White Witch before we really interact with her, it's the White Witch. Therefore, that's why Narnia is an eternal winter. And they literally say so many times, in the book, they say so many times, it's an eternal winter without a Christmas. How sad. Basically, they say that thing every time. And so the whole gist is the White Witch is bad because she's created winter, specifically a winter without a Christmas. So when we have the little Santa come in, when we have the little Santa come in.
I would say he was pretty big, but.
Yeah, the big Santa, the big guy. When we got the big guy coming in, that's just the way of him saying oh, clearly we're getting closer to beating the White Witch because now we have kind of a Christmas going on. Which is still weird, but they do make it an important part of, again, the prophecy of it all. But it is so weird just to even have you have this whole fantasy world of characters that you just made up, and you're going to steal another made-up character and put him in your world? At that point, it's just, Christmas fan fiction.
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to sit here and rack my brain. It's I guess he is a childhood symbol of hope when they really needed it, because at the time, they thought the queen was on them, so they're, wishfully thinking, and again, if this is a figment of her imagination, she would wish that Santa was there to save them. They're surrounded by winter, whatever it is. So there's that hope into it, but it just didn't make sense to me, and I did not like it.
Maybe if you were watching this movie around Christmas, it would feel different. Maybe you'd be like, oh yes, I was waiting for the Santa.
Yeah, where's the Polar Express? Where is that next? Where is she?
Is the Polar Express?
Another great episode we did.
Another great episode we did. Go listen to if you're listening to this episode around the winter time when it's nice and chilly and beautiful. Go listen to the Polar Express next because it's a good one. I mean, it's a bad movie, but it's a good episode when we talk about it.
The last thing
More on that later.
The last thing I wanted to mention was I did really like the flash forward at the end. Seeing them like look like they're maybe in their 30s or 40s. And then coming back. I did like the little flash forward.
It's so hard to do that well, I think, but some of these movies really nail it. You know, it needs to perfectly balance like cheesy and emotional. And it's a hard balance to get because you go too cheesy and then you end up it's just bad, you know? It's like people aren't taking it seriously. Whereas you go too emotional and it's like it's still a kid's movie. This whole thing is a little cheesy. You do need to have just like a little fun with it. But I mean, hey, look, you need to have a little fun with life, guys. Yeah. This isn't even a Chronicles of Narnia thing. This is just a straight up piece of life advice here. You need to have a little fun and a little Turkish delight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think they did a good job though. They added a little bit of mystery there at the end because it just ends and you're like, what happened? There is like the way that they fall upon the lampposts again. Like I don't know. I think they did a pretty good job with the ending. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't agree, but
I'd be curious to think. Have you seen Prince Caspian yet, or no?
I know of him, but I haven't seen that movie. I've only seen this first one.
Okay, we'll have to talk outside the podcast because I'd be curious to think of what you feel how they get back to Narnia in that film. It's different. It is very different, and I will just be neutral because I think it's an interesting thing.
See, I thought the other movies happened while they were in Narnia. Like, they haven't gone back yet. But they go back to Narnia?
They go back to Narnia. Just like in Back to the Future, they go back to the future.
I haven't seen that movie.
You've not... Wait. Have we had this conversation like 10 times?
I haven't seen most of the... Like, I haven't seen E.T. I haven't seen a lot of the classics.
Oh my god. Okay, this is why you're on the podcast, because I'm actually just forcing you to see all of these important movies.
Well, I've seen this movie.
Right, you've seen this movie. Is E.T. an adaptation? Can I technically...
And Stuart Little. I saw that one.
And Stuart Little.
And Chicken Little.
Iconic. Yeah, Stuart Little is one of those movies you watch in film school to just really get a grip on film history and move forward in your career.
Yeah.
Just like it's right next to Citizen Kane in the curriculum. So I'm glad you saw it. I'm glad we could see it together. But back to the Chronicles of Narnia.
That's not a mouse. That's my brother.
Hey, so he says to the guy.
That's all I had to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not too much else to touch on. I know there really is only a handful of differences between the book and the movie here. Overall, it was a very faithful adaptation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easier to do that with kind of it's right between like a children's book and a young adult book. It's a little bit heavier than the average children's book, but it's not quite as complex as a young adult book.
Yeah.
Anyways, I do think that lends itself to an easier adaptation when it comes to film. So very well done on this film. I haven't seen any of the earlier adaptations of Narnia, so I'd be curious to see if they change things more heavily or if they are even more faithful on some things. It'd be interesting. But again, like I said, part of the reason I wanted to even bring this episode here in the first place is to just kind of open us up to starting to think about how the Greta Gerwig adaptations are going to go. And reminder, she is set and contracted to make 2 Chronicles of Narnia films for Netflix. We don't have any release dates. We don't even know if they're filming yet. It's just kind of like the preliminary information. So things may change, but that's how it's going now. And this segues me over to our movie theater butter pop quiz. Jen, are you ready?
To be fair, I didn't even know they were making another adaptation, so I hope the question's not about that.
It's not, but it's on a similar topic.
Okay.
So, in the same way that Greta Gerwig is slated to do 2 films for the Chronicles of Narnia, the director of this film, the one we are talking about today, The Chronicles of Narnia, the Walden Disney series, the one everybody knows.
Andrew?
The director of this film, Andrew Adamson.
Yeah.
Directed the first 2 films of this Narnia series. So he directed this one we're talking about today, and he directed Prince Caspian. He also directed the first and second movie of another famous children's franchise. This time, It is animated. Can you guess, Jen, what that series is, and therefore what the first two films this guy directed?
Andrew Adamson. That name sounds so familiar. It's animated. Is it DreamWorks?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You already know this,
It's
don't
not?
you? It is.
It is DreamWorks? Okay.
Exactly what you're thinking. It is.
See, I'm torn between two. Give me a second. Okay.
I'll tell you. Do you want me to give you another hint?
No. Yeah, give me a hint.
Okay, I'm going to give you a visual hint, but I'm going to describe it for our listeners. The visual hint that I'm giving you, Jen, is I'm putting two antenna-looking things
Is it
on my
Shrek?
head. Shrek.
Okay, I thought it was Shrek, but I was like, I wasn't 100% sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy. The second you said DreamWorks, I was like, did she already look this up, like in her own research?
No, I just okay. So I'm doing a Shrek movie marathon next month.
Oh my god,
Which
incredible!
I'm so excited for. So I had the Shrek movies already in my my to be watch list, and I just saw it on there. But his name, Andrew Adamson, it stuck out to me, you know.
Yeah, he's got that alliteration name. It's a very classical name. It's just like Chris Columbus, not Christopher Columbus. That's a different guy.
That's a different guy.
Chris Columbus, who directed 2 of the Harry Potter films. There's something about I think it's good luck when you have a director direct the first 2 films of a series because you can very clearly kind of establish things.
Yeah. You know what we should do for the Movie Theater Butter podcast?
Yeah.
A Christmas special. We should do all the Harry Potter movies.
Okay, I've wanted to for a long time do like a 2, maybe even 3-part series just on the entirety of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
What I want to do with Harry Potter, instead of talking about the books against the movies kind of thing, like instead of talking about that direct adaptation, because I feel like that's a story that's been so talked about. Yeah. What I want to do with Harry Potter is I want to talk about all of the media that has since been adapted from that series. There are musicals, another play, a Potter puppet pal. There's so many different pieces of media that
TikTok,
have come.
thirst traps.
Yeah, TikTok, tons of things. Yeah, we'll definitely get there. We'll definitely do a really cool Harry Potter series. But while we're talking about like a Christmas special for Harry Potter, this brings me over to just the cool, chilly, wintry vibes of it all, which is so much this film. And I mean, we talked about Santa Claus. Look, this movie is a Christmas movie. Even without Santa, this movie is arguably a Christmas movie. Yeah, I mean, your face is telling me no. What do you think?
I don't agree with that, but
Okay, why?
I mean, you think Christmas movie, right? And you think Santa, but the most thing is like you think about the whimsical of Christmas and like the family spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think, could you watch this around Christmas time? Sure, but does it scream Christmas movie to me? No. The same way with Harry Potter. I don't think Harry Potter are Christmas movies, yet they're always shown around. I don't think a movie that has a Christmas
you're wrong
scene,
on that. So
I don't think a movie that has a Christmas scene in it should be considered a Christmas movie. That's just my own person. I think it should be about Christmas.
So you think any movie that has... Are you saying the logic of what your argument is?
Like one Christmas scene. Like Harry Potter has that one, like, good morning, Happy Christmas, Ron. Like, that shouldn't be considered a Christmas movie because it has one single scene of a Christmas tree in it.
We could fight about this for a long time, and I kind of want us to. But
yeah,
for me, there's certain films and certain series that are... it's less of like, do they have winter in them, and more of just like the vibe of, is this a movie that I will want to watch during the month of December? And then that to me is like a Christmas movie, which I know is maybe a very vague and loose way of saying it, but we can agree to disagree for sure. That does segue me over to asking us though, Jen, how do you think this film is best watched?
See, here's the thing: is that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is not on my favorite movie list. I think that if it is your favorite movie, it is the type of movie that you'll come back to, and like everyone has a movie like this, that you'll come back to when you need escapism, when you need a break from the real world, which is kind of ironic for the story of this movie.
Yeah.
But when you need a taste of childhood innocence, you need a break. I think that could be said at any point of time you can watch this. It could be at 2 a.m. It could be at right after dinner. Like, you know, it could be summer, winter, fall. Winter, of course, I guess is more, because everything's covered in snow, is a little bit more pushed that way. But you could really watch this whenever. I haven't
December 25th? Could you watch this?
Actually, no. The TVs turn off at that time. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, the only way to watch movies on December 25th is that you have to go to the movie theater. You're legally obligated. If you're watching a movie at home on December 25th,
yikes.
Don't. Yeah.
So I think that, just like if you need a little bit of your childhood back and just escape for a little bit, this is a good movie for that.
I love it. Clearly, the way that I think this film is best watched is very winter, Christmassy centered.
Yeah.
Because I do believe it's sort of the Christmas wintertime film. I think on a cold, snowy day in December, you bundle up with your favorite blanket and a bowl of hot soup. And to top it all off, you really have to have a sleeping cat or a dog in your room while you're watching this movie. But I think that's the way that this film is best watched, personally.
I think we can all agree as a collective society that no matter when, where, who, what, whatever, you're watching this movie, you gotta have a nice bowl of Turkish delight.
Yeah, a bowl of warm, hot, bubbly Turkish delight.
Yeah. No matter what.
It sounds so gross. I don't even want to. Absolutely so 0 out of 10. So sticky. Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you for being on yet another episode of the Movie Theater Butter podcast.
Heck yeah.
We're never going to have you back for any other episode. This is the cap. This is the last one. We're done forever for sure.
Okay.
So, bye.
Bye. That sounds good.
No. We won't go to there. We won't end it there. Jen, we will absolutely have you on for more episodes. Because you're one of my best friends and because I love podcasting with you. If you love listening to Jen, as I do, go over to the Bookstop podcast. She hosts and runs her own podcast, the Bookstop podcast. It's incredible. How long have you been running that?
I think today marks 2 days.
No, I think it's a little bit longer than that.
Oh.
At least 3.
It's been about 4 years now that it's been going on. We upload monthly now because Sis plays too much D&D now. Kim and me have done so many episodes on there. So many episodes. And then, check it out.
Hell yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Jen. Love you always.
Bye!
Well, it sounds like that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Movie Theater Butter, a Till Kim Productions podcast, edited by Kevin Matthew Keeling of Take the World. If you have a free moment, we'd really appreciate if you like or follow the podcast from wherever you're listening. It'll really help us grow our audience and be able to continue making episodes for you guys. You can also follow us on Instagram for monthly episode schedules, extra content, and even surprise video episodes. All right, I'm done. See you next episode.